Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the MOT Made Manageable with the IMI and DVSA. I'm Georgia Manane, Community Manager from the IMI. Just to get started, I just wanted to go through some housekeeping. So this meeting is being recorded, so we will be sending you an email with the recording link, hopefully early next week. If you do have any questions, then please submit them in the Q&A box on your toolbar. This is a really good chance for you to ask questions to Graham and Chris. So we hope that it will be a really engaging session. And I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. So we have Graham Allen, the Partnership Manager from the IMI, and Chris Price, Head of MOT Policy at DVSA. So I will hand over to you both.
Thanks, Georgia. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along. So again, some of you will remember us from last year. Around about this time last year, we did a similar session, which proved to be very popular. So here we are again. Not saying it was Chris and I that made it popular, but obviously the topic. Chris, I think before we get into the how and the support available for testers, probably important to explain why it's so important to complete the training and assessment before the deadline. So who better to explain that than DVSA themselves?
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, thanks, and thanks to the IMI for inviting me along to chat about MOT and training this afternoon. Obviously my topic of expertise. So yeah, I mean, it's been a funny few years, isn't it, of course, with the pandemic and everything around. And training as well as, you know, we've always needed to keep training going throughout the pandemic, keep our skill set high no matter what's going on. And over the past couple of years, we have introduced some extensions to the training year, very much to keep the industry moving. We recognise that, you know, the increased demands on the industry during the pandemic, the increased demands on the peaks in testing that's been a kind of a repercussion of the extensions that happened earlier in the year to cope with the pandemic. So, but this year we're very much pulling out of that, thankfully. He says, touching wood. So there is no extension this year. There's no extension to the annual training happening. The annual training year does finish on the 31st of March at midnight. If you haven't done this year's annual assessment, unfortunately, testers will be stopped from testing. They will be switched off. And to get back on, as is normal, as is pre-pandemic, the way to do that is to do next year's annual assessment and potentially, not in all cases, but in most cases, probably do a demo test in front of a DVSA examiner. So it becomes a bit painful. And we're a relatively small organisation compared to the industry, actually. So, you know, if the numbers we're seeing today don't do the assessment, you know, we're not going to get around you all very quickly. So if you haven't done your annual assessment and, you know, our phones light up, we'll do what we can, but you're not going to get back testing on day one, maybe not week one, maybe not even week 4, 5 or 6, actually. Right. So this is why it's important to try and get it done as soon as practically possible, which is probably now. We'll come into some data in a minute looking at test volumes.
So the implications there, Chris, are potentially quite severe. If they're not complete by midnight on the 31st of March, as you say, come 1st of April, testers will be suspended from testing, which obviously creates a threat to that garage's income. It creates a threat to reputation, having some difficult conversations with customers, trying to rebook and reschedule, but also, as you pointed out, re-establishing that tester status is not or might not be a quick process. That it could drag on, depending on the volume, depending on how many you and your team need to get through. It could be considerable, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, time consuming. Yeah, and it's going to be detrimental to business and in MOT volumes, of course. And you know, we try and it's difficult. We know people's lives are difficult. We know garages are busy, but we kind of akin training a bit to the MOT actually, or a bit to the operator licensing model actually. What people tend to leave things to the last minute. I do, and I'm speaking here like I'm like some sort of purist, but everyone leaves things to the last minute. We know that. But if you can get to kind of a mindset where, like I said, a bit like the heavy vehicle world, actually, in their world, the MOT shouldn't be a big shock to the operator. What we try and say to them is all through the year, you're doing small little bits of maintenance on your vehicles, keeping them up together, keeping your skill set high. When it comes to MOT time, there's no real stress. It's just taking the vehicle somewhere else for an inspection and it passes quite easily. Job done. I kind of see training a bit like that, actually. So if throughout the year you've done your little bits of CPD and you've kept up to speed with the changes we're implementing, the manual, the guide, having those conversations at work with your peers about MOT testing, vehicle tech, all that sort of stuff, which I know goes on, and you record it. When it comes to doing the annual assessment, which you can do anytime during the year, by the way, you don't have to wait till the end. You can do it in April if you choose to, next year's. Because you've had those conversations, done that work, it should be fairly easy and pain-free and stress-free in some ways. Leaving it to the last minute and then you fail, the pressure's on. It becomes stressful, and it becomes a time where you actually learn less. And the whole purpose of this is about learning. It's not about creating a stressful time for examiners. It shouldn't be. The reason we brought it in was to try and help trying to professionalize the industry a little bit more than we are, and try and improve the tester quality a bit more, so people awareness. So we all think we're really good at our jobs, but it's always good to have training. It's always good to have some sort of checkpoint, and that's the purpose of the annual assessment. It's not put in there to be a barrier. It's not put in there to be an annoyance. It's put in there to try and improve quality and standards. Yeah. So if people can do it in a well-structured, timely manner, it should be fairly pain-free, he says.
Yeah. I think the takeaway point there, Chris, is, and hopefully it's going to become a recurring theme throughout this session, is breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. So that training doesn't have to be done all in one go. That training can be spread across the year, and as you said, similarly, the assessment can be done at any time in the year as well. So I just want to underscore the avoidance of any doubt, because it is a question that I know we're facing, and I'm sure you're probably receiving it too. So for the avoidance of any doubt, if you could just reiterate that point about extension this year for us, please.
Yeah, well, there is no extension this year. So yeah, let's not use the word. There's no extension to the annual assessment. So if training is not completed by the end of March, testers will be switched off, essentially. So let's keep it short and sweet. So
there it is, nice and clear for everybody.
We have quite a few things in place. I just want to, it's worth saying actually, just to help out a little bit actually. So we've done a few pieces of work. We've made it a bit clearer for when you're in the MOT testing service and you look at your profile, and MOT managers look at the profile. You can see when people have taken their annual assessment. You can see who's passed it, who's failed it. You can see the result they got. And when they did that through the year, that's kind of a newish feature we've brought in. We've just very much launched a new version of the MOT testing guide, which is in a much more easier to read sectional kind of format for people to use. We hope that'll make things easier as well. And finally, on the 2nd of March, we are launching a CSV download, which allows MOT managers and AEs to whatever garage they manage, how many testers they manage, they can download a CSV file of all the testers they've got and easily see who has and who hasn't done their annual assessment. So we had some feedback from years gone by saying it's very hard as a manager to see who's where on the annual assessment journey and kind of give people a nudge. So yeah, early in March, slightly later than planned, unfortunately, but early in March we'll be launching that. So AEs and managers can log in and download that report and look at all the testers that they've got under them. They're able to see that who hasn't done it, and then you can easily see of all your people in your branches, all the testers you've got, how many you could potentially lose from testing for a short period in April. So
I'm sure that'll be a really useful, valuable tool for everybody. So I'm sure we'll be looking forward to seeing that. Chris, we've got a slide up now, which is data that that you have provided. So again, I'm gonna kind of hand over to you for this bit to just put a bit more detail and context behind what we're seeing on the screen here.
Yeah, this is very much off the back of the pandemic again, and the extensions. We've been tracking MOT volumes across the year quite a lot, more than we ever have actually the last couple of years, because of the extensions did move it. So it used to be it was never flat across the year. There's always the peaks and troughs with new vehicle registrations, but that's very much moved now. So we've been quite regularly sharing data with many parties about where the peaks and troughs sit in terms of demand for testing. And it's quite clear to see now actually that February is a fairly normal month, normal compared to 2019 data, so the typical. February's at kind of as is actually, but you see in March it does peak up again. There's a bit of a large peak, and that's historic actually. So the March is a bit of the extension stuff hanging over, but also it's still a hangover from new car registrations. So to me, it looks like now is the good time to do it. Get your annual assessments done, get your training done, ready for the kind of like another sort of like push and a bit of a peak that's going to come in March, before April it does drop down a bit more. So yeah, it's we need testers more than ever in March. So in now the sort of middle back end of February, when it's going to be fairly normal, fairly quiet, is a good time to take that hour and a half out your day, research and do your annual assessment, and then come March it's all done and you've got your full capacity of testers to crack on and do the sort of peak in the work that's going to be dropping in March.
Yeah, I think it's a really good graphic there, isn't it, Chris? Because it, like you say, it clearly shows that maybe quiet is not the right word, maybe quieter comparatively speaking. So,
yeah, I guess the word is normal actually. So this is against 2019 data. So we haven't got these huge peaks in demand we've sort of seen in the autumn, but March is, yeah, just because of the kind of nature of the new car registrations, it does get busy again, busier.
Yeah,
it's never normal, is it? Of course,
but for those testers who are still to complete, the evidence would suggest that now is the time to do it rather than March. For more than one reason, obviously. Because again, as you said earlier, the longer you leave it, the more pressure you're putting on yourself. But here we've got some data as well, which also supports that February would be a better time to do it than March. And also looking forward into next year as well. Again, you can see those forecasted peaks, can't you? So when we're talking about the 22-23 window, clearly before the autumn would be a better time to get your CPD and assessment done and get it in the bag and not have to worry about it then for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we're seeing more MOTs than ever before at the minute. I think it's just, because new cars aren't around at the minute, people aren't buying new cars for lots of reasons. Could be, a lack of semiconductors, the cars aren't available. I've heard of many people that have ordered a car and there's huge back orders. So we're seeing more vehicles being MOT'd. So actually there's a lot more volume in them coming through all garages at the minute across, all months actually, not just the peaks and troughs. So yeah, making sure that all your workforce are, fully trained and upskilled so they can conduct this work is probably more key than ever now, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if it's worth. Oh, here we go. So, yeah, sorry, Graham.
Yeah. So we've already discussed there, Chris, and apologies for asking you to repeat it, but we know we are very clear now about the exemption policy for this year. So as you can see there, as of 10 days ago, end of January, we were at circa 48,000 testers still to complete. Chris, have you got any update on that figure? What's the current status? Do you know?
Yeah, so we've had a bit of a push ourselves as well with some comms gone out, and thankfully the figures have dropped down quite a bit, but we're still at nigh on 40,000 testers still due to do their own assessments. 39,800 or so testers that have not done the assessment. So that's what we're at the minute. I think roughly 67,000 testers. So yeah, nigh on 2/3 or so, if I'm doing maths right. Is that right? I think so. Still to do it. So that's a huge volume to go with, sort of, 6 weeks or so left, which is kind of, why this kind of call is quite timely, actually, to give that nudge, give that reminder. And, I think folks on the call, if, we're trying to be quite stark actually on this, and trying to be quite, not too sensationalist, but we kind of need your help a bit to spread the message, I guess, a bit further, to nudge people into getting this done if they can, and get some training in the bag sooner rather than later, really.
Well, hopefully, sessions like this and the comms that DVSA have been putting out and the comms that we've been putting out, hopefully that's going to serve to do just that. So maybe now we'll move on to a bit more about the how it's accessible and the support that's available. So we understand. Thanks for that, Chris. We understand a bit more now about where we are, the position, and of course the context and the detail that explains kind of why we're in that position. Obviously, the MOT extension that was put in place during the height of the pandemic, absolutely the right thing to do at that time. But it has, as we can see from that data, it has created a shift in that profile, which means testers are busier at different times of the year than perhaps they were used to. You then combine that with right back at the beginning of this test year, we were still juggling lockdowns and various other restrictions that were in place on us. Throughout the year, there's been absenteeism due to, and no business has managed to avoid that. Every business has suffered with people absent due to COVID and things like that. So we know the pressures that testers are under, and there's the rationale for perhaps pushing back the training and assessment to later in the year. But the fact remains, here we are now with 6 weeks to go and a challenge on our hands. So we need to focus on how we make that achievable, don't we? And it absolutely is achievable. I think that's the key message, isn't it? It absolutely is. So, IMI are one of 2 DVSA approved providers of the annual training and assessment, and we've created a package to fit the needs of those busy testers and make, as the title of this session suggests, make that MOT a little bit more manageable for you. So we've got the 3-hour online e-learning, and as we've said, I said this would become a recurring theme throughout this session. As we've said, that can be split down into manageable, bite-sized chunks. And actually, when you think about it, 3 hours plus, let's say, an hour for the assessment, so 4 hours in total across a year. I think you said it earlier, didn't you, Chris? Shouldn't be a huge demand for anyone in any role. And of course, the beauty of it being online is it's 24-hour accessible, 24/7 accessible, isn't it, via the website. So if you do have busy days, and we know you do, then clearly it's accessible at any time. The assessment itself is we've got the option to take it again should you need to, with an 80% required pass rate. There is a chance, of course, that there is a chance that you might need to resit it, or of course you might not be satisfied with your score and think you can do better, so you might want to take the opportunity to improve that score. Having that second chance there is a really useful function. I think I'd also like to draw attention to the work that some of our colleagues here at the IMI and the MOT team have been doing to help create and make this more manageable and easier to embed into busy days. So in addition to this webinar, we've got some refreshed support functions, and we've got some brand new support functions as well. So on the website, on the MOT page, we've got an all new FAQ section. So as you might expect, we're constantly asked various questions about MOT, CPD and assessment. So we've collated the most frequently asked ones and put them in a section on the website there. So easy to access. We've also uploaded some new guidance videos. So the ones that are there at the moment are specifically around, I suppose we group them as kind of navigating the system. So how to redeem a code, that sort of thing. But I'm also aware that we've got some brand new videos being developed as we speak, and plans to upload those in the coming days. So we're going to see, I think, another 4 or 5 videos being uploaded in the coming days. Again, more support videos on how to navigate, how to access, how to complete. As always, if you can't find the information you need, or the question that you've got isn't listed on the FAQs, we're approachable, always approachable. Email, direct phone. I think I heard yesterday that our team received over 500 calls last week alone on this subject. So they're there to support. We've got a new live chat function in the website, which is proving very popular. That team were in place over the festive period as well, when you and I were relaxing and enjoying ourselves. They were there answering these questions, because again, that's the time where many people were able to free up the time to do the CPD and assessment. So the team were there to support. They've got a number of evenings booked where they're going to be accessible up till, I think it's 8 p.m. in the evening. So there's a number of evenings between now and the end of March where that MOT support team are going to be there to help you. So there really is a full breadth of support available. And Chris, I know you want to add about the support that DVSA yourselves can offer as well, don't you?
Yeah, the same actually. I mean, obviously we're not going to be on hand to answer the actual questions, but we're always here to answer.
We don't do that.
Any questions you've got around anything MOT testing wise, not just the annual assessment. And there's loads of literature we publish on gov.uk. I'd encourage you to sign up to our DVSA directs, which are alerts and lots of content around MOT testing, which help as well. So yeah, it's not a closed shop. This isn't, we're not here to trip you up. This isn't at all, far from it. It's just here to make us all kind of improve and better. That's the idea behind it. It's not a method to stop people testing, far from it, and completely the opposite. It's a method to make people better at testing. So
I was just going to say, Chris, that's a really good point, because a shortfall in testers would be really counterproductive for you as an organisation, wouldn't it? And obviously for the safety of road users. So it's a really good point to underscore, actually, that this is not an intent. The intention is not to catch people out and stop people testing. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, good God, no, we've got no intention to stop garages, testers testing. We want everyone to be testing. We want we want flexibility for the motoring public to be able to get their test whenever and wherever they need to at the huge network of garages. That's exactly where it needs to be. That's exactly what we want. You as the motor trade can also want that flexibility. It's better to have that kind of like trained workforce that you can utilize to do multiple different tasks whenever you choose to. So yeah, it's completely opposite. It's very much about kind of like empowering people and making sure that the people, when they do the test, are there, current and trained, and are making the right decisions, so that the public are getting the right output on their vehicle when it's tested as well, so that we know that the standards remain high. So in theory, if you're learning, training, doing your job properly, then I'm kind of out of a job. I don't need to do much in some ways. Our enforcement teams don't need to come knocking on the door, because there's not much to find. And that's kind of like, I know it's a bit of a nirvana kind of sort of place you want to get to, and it's never going to be that, but it is that kind of mindset, really. Whereas quality is the default. People are just doing this, and it's and it doesn't I know it's perceived as a pain now, but actually when you're in the depths of the MOT thinking, I don't know how to do this, a little penny will drop in your mind. Oh yeah, remember that. That's how it is. This is a pass. This is a fail. This is this vehicle, whatever. And it just you just kind of, it clicks into place, and then the vehicle gets the right result, and the motorist's view of the garage and the MOT remains high, and quality is there. That's where it kind of all needs to kind of play out to, if we can.
Absolutely, yeah. So sticking with the theme of support, there's a bullet point on there that I was really keen to highlight as well. So the fourth one down. So what I've talked about so far is for want of a better phrase, a kind of direct approach. So testers or garages coming to the IMI direct. Of course, what we also have, we fully appreciate that there are many testers out there would still prefer a little bit more of a kind of face-to-face experience, a more personal experience with their training and assessment. Maybe they feel that they need a little bit more support or guidance during either the training or the assessment, for that matter. If they have an IT issue or whatever. Therefore, we have a extensive range of network of organisations offering the IMI training and assessment package. So what that would give you, and guaranteed they're in every corner of the country, there'll be one near you. So what that gives you, in addition to everything that we've already spoken about, is, like I said, is that more face-to-face approach. You can go along, or in many cases they'll probably even come to you, and they can support you with that training. And again, like I said, with that assessment. Obviously, as Chris said, they can't help with the answering of questions, but maybe just setting up the assessment, maybe, like I said, IT challenges, anything like that. We've got a network of organisations that can help you through that. But I think the overarching message here needs to be that you're not alone. There is support there for you. It's an important piece that has to be completed every year, and we're here to support you through it. Regardless of the model that you, or the path that you take in order to get to that, though, I think the output, of course, is the successful completion of the assessment, meaning you can continue to test. But also, don't forget, and a bit of a plug here, if you don't mind. Don't forget, when you complete the assessment with the IMI, you also get IMI membership out the back of that. So that includes access to, obviously you have the IMI post-nominals, so you can demonstrate that you're a member of the only professional body dedicated to the automotive industry. You've got access to the IMI magazine, Motor Pro. You've got a range of trade discounts, access to further CPD, discounted CPD. So there's a whole host of benefits to completing with the IMI. Plus, of course, access to a whole community, for further advice, further guidance, further support, should you need it. So, Georgia, I see you've moved on to the next slide. Thank you very much. By the way, we are starting to get some questions in now, so I think we'll probably come to them at the end. Do you think, Chris, is that all right? If we pick up the questions at the end?
Yeah, I can do it. I'm not sure if they're, I haven't looked at them. They might be, are they training related or? Let's do them at the end, shall we? Let's probably do it at the end. Yeah, it's probably easier.
Right. We'll come back to that at the end. So thank you for submitting your questions. We'll come to those at the end. Any that we can't get to during the session, we will respond to as best we can afterwards. So, Chris, we've got a section here on bit of crystal ball work, a bit about where the MOT test is headed. Obviously, we were all very aware that the technology involved in modern vehicles is growing at or developing at an exponential rate, and I just wanted to have a piece here about, and you might not be able to give too much detail, but a piece here about where you see the MOT test going and the sort of things that you and the working groups that you're involved in are researching at the moment.
Yeah, sure. It's certainly exciting, isn't it? I've heard the next few years or whatever be described as the fourth industrial age in terms of motor vehicles, because it certainly is changing rapidly. I guess things we do in MOT to keep up with that, we have to temper with, you know, the kind of vast network of MOT stations, and we know that the very much aware of the differences in MOT stations from, you know, small local garages like the one that's near me to, you know, main dealers with pots of money. There's the whole vast, you know, array of test stations across the country, all doing a very good job actually. It doesn't, you know, it's not saying there's huge differences in them. So things we bring into the test is that's my kind of first thoughts actually when we bring things into the test. But there's no getting away from the fact that vehicles are changing rapidly, and you know, we're going to have to slowly start adapting not only the way we repair vehicles, but the way we look to ensure they're safe on the road. And at the minute, you know, we use the MOT for that, and it works really well. I think that MOT is going to have to start changing, and this is where we're starting dipping our toe into the things we're doing now. So, you know, connected is what we've kind of slowly bringing in, connected equipment to quite good effect actually. And the final piece in that jigsaw, I'll just jump around the slide, but is headlight testing. We've had some challenges of headlight testing, it's fair to say, and the pandemic hasn't helped, mainly because we've been trying to get out to Belgium for a while, to LET, to do some work with those guys on headlight testers. But that is earmarked for this year now to try and get out there. I feel like a broken record. I think I mentioned this last year on this call actually. But yeah, so that's the final piece in the jigsaw in connected equipment. We will get that up and running, we hope, to good effect. And that's one of the kind of problem areas in MOT. It's been there for quite a while actually, headlight alignment. And so I'm quite, you know, if we get that right, I think that will be a big benefit in having not only connected but automatic headlight testing as well. Be a really useful tool to get into garages, so you know, you can just line it up with the vehicle and it'll go, you know, red or green, pass or fail. It'll make the test quicker, make the test more accurate as well. So I'm quite keen to get that in if we can. So we'll see where that pans out. I guess the one to mention as well really is on electric vehicles. There's a big drive for electric vehicles coming into the test, and we don't do much with electric vehicles at the minute in the MOT. We look at the motors, look at the wiring, we look at all the stuff we can do. So there's been some questions around for me, and this is kind of theoretical questions around, can the MOT help in improving the take-up of second-hand electric vehicles? I have some interesting conversations on that. And what they mean by that is, can we use the MOT to inform customers better about their condition? So the condition of the batteries, conditions of the vehicles at the time of test. So we're having some sort of theoretical ideas around that, what that could mean. Can we start collecting battery health from vehicles for their lifespan? So we can see that, you know, actually battery health maintains quite well. So giving a buyer some confidence that a 5-year-old vehicle's battery health is as good as it is on day one. I'm guessing it's not, but it might be useful information for a second-hand buyer to have that data. So we have those sort of challenges coming our way around EVs in the future. Don't know where that will go with that, but what it leads you to thinking is plugging into a vehicle may well be something we have to do. So
I was just about to say, because that would then take you to follow, if you were to follow that thought, that would then take you beyond the current status of inspection. Now you're plugging in or interrogating, aren't you?
Yeah. And then whether that's plugging into, there's two trains of thought, whether that's plugging in via EOBD, which is probably the easier one, or over the airwaves data from the vehicle. We're not too sure yet, but we've tentatively started to look at how we can plug in a vehicle, how you can integrate that into the MOT. And again, tempering that with time of the test would take and cost. Even an entry grade scan tool can be quite expensive, and scale that up to 24,000 garages, that's a lot of money. So yeah, early days, but I think plugging in will be something we'll have to seriously look at and extract. I think there's some real world benefits from that though. For doing that, you can extract probably the mileage from the vehicle, probably the VIN number, fault codes, and again battery or emission data from the vehicle to transmit to MTS. So there's real benefits from doing it as well. But yeah, very early days. This isn't me saying we're going to do it. This isn't me just talking about what we're looking at for the future. The other thing we are doing actually at the minute is looking at bringing in some form of camera into the test actually, and we're calling it ANPR cameras. It does recognize number plates, but it's not like a gantry camera over the motorway. It's far more simplistic than that. It's software that will read a number on the vehicle, in this case a registration number. So we are very close to starting some trials in garages with that software we've written, and that can be on a number of devices, so it gives flexibility to garages what device that could be. It could be a fixed camera, but probably end up being some form of tablet that the tester can take a picture of the vehicle with, and that picture can then be uploaded to us. So A, it shows there's a vehicle there on test, and B, the registration number is extracted from that image, and that's the registration number which starts the test. So we know its registration number is ABC123. It's a Ford Fiesta, it's red, and the system goes, yeah, it is, that's great, start test. So that's something we're trialing with it, and there's again lots of benefits for that. It cuts down on some of the errors we see. We deal with lots of errors year on year where people make genuine mistakes. So either they've tested, put a B for an 8 or a 1 for an I into the system and then create a new vehicle, or again innocently they've tested the wrong vehicle because picked up the wrong job card, registered the vehicle for test, gone to test it and not actually looked at the vehicle, but got on to looked at the vehicle but not at the particulars of the vehicle, what they've started the test on. So we spend a lot of time putting all that information right, and you can imagine the public is inconvenienced because some people occasionally do even leave the MOT station without an MOT on the vehicle, or a different vehicle has been tested, and that takes a lot of unpicking from our end. So bringing in this kind of technology, either via camera or kind of some sort of plugin, will eradicate a lot of those issues we see for data entry, incorrect data entry. And again, if we can start extracting other numbers and data from the vehicle in that way, so you could read the mileage, you could read the VIN number. Again, that makes it much better for the tester that data is not incorrect. So again, we see a lot of issues with mileage being put in incorrectly. Someone put in, often see the last 6 of the VIN number is used as the mileage by accident. So the person with their high-end Rolls Royce and the mileage shoots up are not particularly happy. That's displayed on MOT history. So and we spend a lot of time rectifying that. So yeah, that's kind of a lot of the kind of futures kind of stuff we're looking at in a minute to bring into the test. But a lot in that actually, and a lot of cost potentially for people. So we're trying to do it in a way where it's not actually expensive. So the software we're talking about will work on a smartphone, will work on a tablet you've already got, will work on kit that's already in the garage, and easily talk to the MOT testing service. We're not asking people to go out and buy thousands of pounds worth of equipment. We envisage as lots of garages that have got scan tools in there today. We've talked to a lot of manufacturers, and some of those scan tools can easily be connected up via Bluetooth to a service, which they already do today in a number of cases. So, and like all things we do, it'll be brought in periodically. It won't be big bang. We're not going to ask every garage to have all this kit on day one. It will be rolled in a way which is cost effective and works for the industry, works for the people in it. But I think we've all got to a point now where we need to kind of start recognizing that vehicles are marching forward really, really quickly, and we probably have to start thinking about how we improve the test. The last couple of days, actually, I've been in Warwick University with Department of Transport and some of their departments actually looking at autonomous vehicles. So the main department is CCAV, the Connected Autonomous Vehicles Department, and the Law Commission as well were there talking about how these vehicles are going to slowly be integrated into society, and how they are going to work on public roads. There's a project starting on the Forth Bridge very soon called what's it called? What's it called now? Anyway, where essentially buses are going to be running across the Forth Road Bridge autonomously. They have a driver, they have a safety driver in position, but the buses are going to be traveling 14 miles from one point to another, from a park and ride area to one autonomously very soon. And things like those little projects are starting to grow, and the way that these vehicles are slowly going to become integrated are things we're going to have to start looking at, and how we manage safety on those vehicles. The other system is the automatic lane keeping system, ELKS, which is coming in as well, and probably higher end vehicles at the minute, and only at 37 miles an hour on certain roads, because that's, at the minute, it's a trial. So once they've proved it works on those roads at 37 miles an hour, at some point it will increase to 70 miles an hour. And much like ADAS and all other systems on the vehicle, at some point, I'm sure MOT will be called on to look at test those systems. And again, my head comes back to, okay, well, how do we do that? We're going to have to start plugging into vehicles to assess them, I think. I don't know. And no one's really sure yet. And it was clear yesterday and the previous day that they're not sure yet. So there's a lot of theoretical conversations, but we're kind of there embedded in those organizations now, having those kind of further conversations. So, I'm at the table, understanding it, kind of fighting the corner for the industry a bit as well, which is kind of where I came from, and understand that, you can't just expect these things to land on day one. It's got to be integrated. People need training, people need experience, and there's the cost to the motorists in the industry to bring these things in. But again, it's kind of the future. It's exciting, challenging, and something we need to be prepared for, I think, as well.
Excellent. So yeah, thanks for that, Chris. I mean, it's clear there that the significant advances in this technology is giving you, and everybody else obviously, but giving you plenty to think about. As you say, it's inevitable that the MOT test will have to evolve. It's always evolved anyway, hasn't it? And that's another important point to make. The MOT test has always evolved with technology. But as you rightly said, here we are now at a point where technology is advancing more rapidly than it ever has done before, and therefore the test has to advance with it. So yeah, really interesting, and interesting to hear about the groups that you've been involved in as well over the last couple of days, as recently as the last couple of days. There's a couple of points there about what testers can do to stay current. So we'll just cover that briefly. Obviously, the first one is the requirement for the annual training anyway. I mean, that will, just like the test itself, the training will continue to evolve and incorporate these technologies. So first and foremost, it's obviously it's completion of the training and assessment. We've already mentioned the benefits or I've already mentioned the benefits of completing the annual CPD and assessment with the IMI, obviously rolling into IMI membership, which then opens up access, as I said, to a whole host of discounted CPD courses. And there's a range of online e-learning and face-to-face training in association with our CPD partners. All of that is going to help you keep pace with this evolving technology. Beyond that, obviously, as an awarding organisation, we have a whole host of qualifications and accreditations that are all designed to support an individual's professional development. So just to highlight one example, because it is very much the number one topic in the industry at the moment. So electric vehicle. So everybody in the industry knows EV sales are going through the roof. Like it or not, EV is or electric is not just the future. It's very much here now. Well, certainly for light vehicles, there's an argument for other drivetrains in heavy and bus and coach, but certainly for light vehicle, it looks like EV is very much the way to go, or the way we are going. However, we also know, and we are constantly, when I say we, the IMI are constantly relaying this message, that we also know there is a significant lack of EV trained and certificated technicians across the industry. And many of those technicians are also going to be MOT testers. So latest data shows just 6.5% of known technicians in the UK have done any recognised EV training or qualification. Now, on the current trajectory, we're looking at a projected shortfall of around 35,000 skilled workers with that specialism. Now, I'm conscious this isn't an EV webinar. This is an MOT webinar, but it is relevant to this point about how testers can stay current. So IMI TechSafe, just that last bullet point there. IMI TechSafe is a government endorsed recognition within our existing IMI professional register, which demonstrates that individuals have the commitment to achieving and retaining, not just achieving, but retaining the specialist knowledge, skills, and safety related behaviors that you need to work on this technology. And you can gain IMI TechSafe recognition via the completion of relevant qualifications or accreditation. So, like I said, not necessarily MOT related, but it is related in the context of what testers can do to stay current and stay up to date with this technology. So I hope you don't mind me just putting that bit in the end there. So, welcome back, Georgia.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for such an amazing discussion about MOT and obviously the needs and the training and assessment and how it is so important to get that done before the deadline. So as you can see, we've had a few questions, so we'll just go through that. So why was the change to the format of the MOT guide done so close to the deadline for testers? Was asked, I think, quite earlier on in the session.
Yeah, that's a good point. The content of the guides hasn't changed, actually. So it's exactly the same as it has been. We've just changed the way it's structured. So it was a PDF document before. We've put it into HTML now, like I know what that means. But it means it's much easier to read and structure. We can update it much faster. So when you go and look at it, the hope is you get to the right section much easier, and it won't affect how you use it in that respect to the annual assessment. So naturally, we hope that people find it better and easier to use, and will make it life slightly easier for people actually in the assessment. So yeah, we did grapple with that a bit. Is it the right time to do it? But actually, when we looked at it, we thought this is a good time to do it. This is a perfect time to release the new guide to make it easier for people. So that's why we took the decision to put it out now.
Perfect.
Hope it works. So give us your feedback, Russell. I hope you like it.
As an AEDM, I love the idea of the Russell Up report for testers. When will that be available? And are there any plans for annual assessments for AEDM?
I love that nickname, the Russell Up report.
Yeah, I might use that now. That's what's going to be called. Yeah. So the Russell Up report goes live on the 2nd of March, all being well. We have to do release into the MOT testing service like we normally do. So that's scheduled for them. So hopefully at this stage, no reason to believe it won't go live. So yeah, 2nd of March. We've had discussion. I think that the next probably group of people we might look at annual assessing. I'd like to assess everyone, actually, it's in truth, but I think site managers are probably the group we're looking at actually at the minute for assessment, possibly, but then broadening it to AEDMs as well. I'm not sure where that sits in terms of this annual assessment, or it's a one-off assessment. I don't know. So we haven't had huge thoughts in that area, but it's certainly something we're considering. So yeah, not just the tester that's trained, but also site managers and AEDMs as well. So it's, yeah, not imminent. I don't think it's imminent, but we're having kind of very, very tentative ideas around that at the minute.
Perfect. And Lee has asked, if you're saying it's okay to do the training now, why is it VEs are scoring if you like the garages down at the site review for completing their annual training in the final quarter of the training year?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lee. So what the VE will be looking at when he's doing his annual assessment is the quality of that garage and the way that garage maintains its kind of systems. And the annual assessment and the training is classed as a system. So we want the garage to have systems in place to make sure equipment doesn't go out of calibration. We want to have systems in place to make sure testers are trained when they should be. So the VE will, and they won't be scoring you down much actually. So the scoring doesn't affect the risk score dramatically, by the way. So don't worry too much about it. And it's not a hugely negative effect. We're just saying that the best practice will be, the best place to be is not to leave it to the last quarter, do it beforehand. So they should be giving advice saying, actually, it's better if you do it earlier in the year or throughout the year rather than leave it to the last minute. And they would advise to say best practice would be to do that. So it won't drastically affect the risk score. It will slightly, but not very much at all, really.
And now, of course, Chris, you've got the data to support that as well. That shows the again, I won't use the word quiet, but shows the peaks and more importantly the troughs. So the better opportunities throughout the year to complete the training and the assessment.
Perfect. Okay, Lee has also asked, do you have statistics for pass-fail rates when testers choose to carry out e-learning?
Not sure that's a question for me or you, Graham.
So I think if I'm interpreting that correct, I mean, the bottom line is I don't have the data to hand, but I'm sure we can get that. But I think what the question is asking is a comparison between those testers that choose to do their training solely online and those that choose to engage a more maybe traditional, if that's the better word, if that's the right word, face-to-face model. I think that's what's being asked. As I said, I don't have it to hand, but I shall certainly look into that and see what we can find.
Okay, perfect. Haley has also asked, what are the plans for Euro 7? Will there be a need for further equipment investment?
Yeah, it's another good question, Haley. I'm, in truth, not sure. Euro 7 is fairly new. I had a conversation with DFT on this before Christmas, actually, because Euro 7 is quite far-reaching, actually. It even talks about brake dust, clutch dust, actually, for whole vehicle emissions. So they are just grappling with the figures at the minute. I don't think it's going to go as far as new equipment. It may well go as far as new upgrades to existing equipment. So, you know, tightening the thresholds as we've seen before. But yes, I can't fully answer it yet because I think DFT are still grappling with it at the minute. But I don't think it's going to go as far as new equipment at this stage. We have been looking at particulate number and particulate mass testing in conjunction with DFT again. I know they do that in Europe, but again, that's a tricky one because the aspiration was the equipment would be a combined piece of equipment. So it would be, you know, a diesel tester as we know it today, and also it could do particulate number at the same time. They don't. That's a completely separate machine at a pretty high price, actually. I think I forget the last cost of them. It's, you know, £9,000 for a particulate number or mass machine at the minute. So again, you know, any decision to bring that into MOT testing, albeit really, really good for the environment, good for us as humans, it's better test actually, you know, to text if the DPF rather has been removed. But yeah, a challenging one to bring in across the piece. We're not sure yet where that is in terms of equipment. And again, that's the one that's on Department for Transport's desks, not mine at the minute.
Okay.
I see, Georgia, I see Russell has followed up with his first question. So the first question that was asked, Chris, about the changing the format of the guide. So following up on your answer, Russell has then commented that there have been some changes. In particular, he's asking about the Appendix 10. Oh, no Appendix 10, sorry.
No change table. The change table was at the start. I haven't looked myself actually, but yeah. So what we do when we put an update out, we'll tell you the changes that have happened to the guide. So we'll highlight the changes, and then we have a change table that you can go and look at on gov.uk, which highlights the changes that have happened on that time. So I'll double check on that actually. And again, from feedback, if a change table you would find useful, our views were that it wasn't particularly needed, and we would highlight the main changes rather than everything. Because sometimes we do an update on the guide and there's actually probably no real change that matters in some ways. It will be grammatical changes that happen and word changes and things like that to tidy it up and simplify the wording. Actually, so the wording is the same, but we've simplified it, put it into kind of plainer English, if that makes sense. So the meaning is still the same. So we don't tend to publicize those changes because there's no real need. But if users find that a change table will be handy, then let us know. We can put them back in.
So we are getting pretty close to time now, aren't we, George? But there is one more. So two people have asked a very similar question, Chris, and it's one that you might not be able to answer here and now, but it is one we're just starting to hear quite a bit, and it's one actually that I was hoping to have we were hoping to have a conversation with you and your team about at some point, but just to give you an early heads up, really. So we're starting to get questions about the maximum test fee and a potential increase. Are there plans to increase that? So you might not be able to answer it here and now, but I just wanted you to be aware that it is a question that we are starting to field from our members.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think you all should ask it actually, because it's not a question I can answer directly. And it sounds like a bit of a slopey shoulder, but it's a Department for Transport question, and it's a sort of question that you need to ask actually, because at the minute the government will be thinking it's okay. Actually, the fee's fine because it's the maximum fee, of course, is directly affects the motorist. And that will be that's why the government think, well, actually, I won't put the fee up because it directly affects the motoring public, and they'll look to do something else that benefits the motoring public, or they get money from somewhere else from them. So, we don't, as I say, we don't set the fee. It has been the same for a long, long time, I must admit. And I think when I talk about future type stuff, and you kind of hear me talking about, bringing more things into the test, then quite rightly the industry will go, hang on a minute, that's good. I don't mind doing that. I want to keep pace. I want to keep the MOT testing going, but I want to charge a bit more. So I have and do have similar conversations with my counterparts in DfT about that, and I think they recognise that there's going to become a point where those conversations need to happen a bit more with the minister actually, and ask the minister about these things, about when and how that consultation can happen around fees to MOT.
Right. Well, we will certainly be picking that point up on behalf of our members and on behalf of the industry. So as the professional body, we will certainly be picking up that question.
Yeah, the counter always is, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't matter in some ways, but the counter always is around discounting. Unfortunately,
someone else has just said just that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's when the industry. We don't shoot ourselves in the foot, far from it, because it's a competitive market, and that's why we don't set an actual limit. We want competition, and it's some areas of the country can charge X and some areas can charge Y. But when there's so much discounting, it becomes a hard one to sometimes lobby for in some ways. But,
well, a great one to continue outside of this webinar. Any questions that we've not been able to get to, Georgia? Are we okay to answer them after this? And we'll. Yes. Because I know I'm looking at the time, I'm conscious of time, and I think you've got one more slide that you want to display, haven't you, around useful links?
Yes, definitely. So
thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for your questions. Much appreciated.
And just the last slide here, we've got a roundup of useful links for you. So all of the DVSA comms that Chris mentioned earlier, links to our homepage and where you can purchase your training and assessment too. We also have our support email, mot@imi.org.uk, and our contact number as well. So if you do really need support, whether it's purchasing the test or just kind of just regular MOT information, then please do get in touch with us. And lastly, again, this has been recorded and the information will be sent to you early next week. And just to close, just like to thank Graham and Chris again for joining us and updating us on the on MOT and training and assessments.
You're welcome. Thanks, Georgia.
Hope it was useful. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks so much, everyone. See you soon. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.